The first thing we're going to do once we have connected to the database is retrieving some data from it. I hope you remember that we have an email address and a password stored in our database. So we are going to get that back from the database and display it using PHP. The first thing I'm going to do is change this code slightly so it doesn't display anything if the database connection was successful. But if the database connection wasn't successful, we want to stop the script immediately. We can do that using the command die. If the database connection is not successful, it is not wise to do anything with it. After using this die command, if database connection fails, the script will stop right away. The second bit of preparation that we need is to assign a variable to our database connection so that we can refer to it later on. And normally we call that link. But you can call it whatever you like, but I think it's a standard practice. Now it is time to get the data from the database. The first step of doing that is querying our database. This is where MySQL comes in. Anything in between these two codes will not be PHP. It will be MySQL. So we're learning a whole new language. But don't worry, it's pretty straightforward. If we want to select everything from users table within our database, then we would just say select star from. So this means select everything from, then the table name, which is users in our case. So this is our way of saying select everything from users table. Notice the capitalization. It's not necessary. This code will work fine without it, but it is conventional. Capitalizing the MySQL syntax makes it easier to distinguish between PHP and MySQL and make it easier to read. Let's assign this MySQL code to a variable named query and terminate this line with a semicolon. Again, you can call it whatever you like, but query is a pretty standard variable name to use in this case. To perform the query, we need to connect to the database, which we can do using this link. And then we need to define the query, that means what we want to do, which has been stored in this query variable. Now, using MySQLi query function, we can perform the query. This function requires the link to connect to the database. Then it requires the query itself. Let's terminate this line. Now if we run this script, nothing happens because this function simply performs the query. It does not give us any data. However, if the query is not successful, then it returns empty and generates a warning. Let's misspell this query and try again. This time we got a warning and it says that the query is empty. Let's correct it back. So we can use this function in the if condition. Let's remove this line. Now if the query is successful, it will tell us the query was successful. Otherwise, it will tell us something went wrong. Let's run this script. Alright, the query was successful. Now, let's save whatever this function returns in a variable named result. To actually retrieve the data, we need to use another function, which is MySQL fetch array, and the argument of this function will be whatever is returned from this function, and it is stored in this result variable. And this function returns the row of MySQL table. So let's store whatever it returns in a variable named row, then terminate this line and print whatever we have in this row. Let's run this script and see what we get. Okay, we can see that we have an array here. Let's remove this line, save it and reload the page. Here is what we have retrieved from the database. For an easier to understand representation, let's view the page source. Here is the associative array retrieved from the database. In the users table, we have three information: ID, email, and password. However, we can see 6 elements here. Actually, we have received an associative array where we can access the same information in 2 different ways. Look here. The email address can be accessed using the key 1 or using the key email. Let's echo out a sensible information. We're going to echo out your email address is, then using the concatenation, then row and the value will be retrieved using the key email. Then another concatenation, and your password is using another concatenation. This time we will retrieve row using the key password. Let's terminate this line and run the script. Okay, there is no space here. Let's add a space here and then run the script. So we got your email address is this email address and your password is 12345. So this is how we retrieve data from database. In the next section, we will see how to select a particular data instead of entire table, how to insert data in database from the PHP script, and how to update an existing row.